Maria Santos wiped the sweat from her forehead as she pushed the heavy mop bucket across the concrete floor of Hangar 7. The massive aircraft hangar stretched endlessly before her, its steel beams disappearing into shadows above. She had been working as a maintenance cleaner at Whitmore Air Force Base for 3 years now, and every morning began the same way, arriving before dawn to prepare the hangars for the day's operations. The base was already buzzing with activity even at 5:30 a.m. Pilots were conducting pre-flight checks, mechanics were running diagnostics on fighter jets, and ground crews were preparing for the morning training exercises. Maria moved quietly among the chaos, invisible to most of the personnel who rushed past her. She preferred it that way. At 42 years old, she had learned that staying unnoticed meant staying safe. As she worked her way around a massive F-16 Fighting Falcon, Maria's mind wandered to her daughter Sophia, who was starting her senior year of high school in just 2 weeks. Sophia had dreams of becoming an aerospace engineer, dreams that seemed impossibly expensive on Maria's modest salary, but Maria was determined to make it happen, even if it meant working double shifts and saving every penny. The sound of approaching footsteps caught her attention. A young airman was walking toward her section of the hangar, his face flushed with urgency. Maria continued mopping, expecting him to walk past like everyone else did. Instead, he stopped directly in front of her. "Ma'am, excuse me," he said, slightly out of breath. "General Morrison is conducting an inspection this morning. He'll be here in about 20 minutes. The entire hangar needs to be spotless." Maria nodded calmly. She had dealt with inspections before. Military brass loved their surprise visits, and everything had to be perfect. "I understand. I'll make sure everything is ready." The airman looked relieved. "Thank you. The general is, well, he's very particular about details. He notices everything." He hurried away to spread the word to other personnel. Maria increased her pace, moving efficiently from section to section. She had always taken pride in her work, but today felt different. Something in the young airman's voice suggested this inspection was more important than usual. She wiped down every surface, swept every corner, and made sure not a single piece of debris remained on the polished floor. As she worked near the hangar's main entrance, Maria unconsciously touched the small metal that hung from a simple chain around her wrist. It was an old habit, something she did when she was nervous or deep in thought. The metal was worn and tarnished, its original silver finish dulled by years of handling. Most people wouldn't give it a second glance, but to Maria, it represented everything she had lost and everything she was fighting to rebuild. The hangar was nearly perfect now. Maria gathered her cleaning supplies and prepared to move to the next section when she heard the distinctive sound of polished boots clicking across the concrete floor. The inspection team had arrived early. She quickly stepped aside, positioning herself near a supply cabinet where she could continue working without interfering with the official proceedings. From her peripheral vision, she could see a small group of officers entering the hangar. At the center of the group was a tall man with silver hair and countless ribbons adorning his uniform. General Morrison commanded attention without saying a word. Maria kept her head down and continued organizing supplies, but she couldn't help listening as the general's voice echoed through the hangar. He was asking detailed questions about maintenance schedules, security protocols, and operational readiness. His voice carried the authority of someone who had spent decades in military service. The inspection team moved methodically through the hangar, examining aircraft, reviewing paperwork, and testing equipment. Maria continued her work quietly, staying well out of their path. She had almost finished organizing the supply area when she heard the footsteps approaching her location. She looked up briefly to see the general walking directly toward her. His eyes focused intently on something. Maria's heart began to race. Had she missed something during her cleaning? Was there a problem with her work? General Morrison stopped just a few feet away from her, his expression unreadable. Maria stood perfectly still, uncertain whether she should speak or remain silent. The other officers gathered behind the general, equally confused by his sudden focus on the maintenance worker. The hangar fell completely silent except for the distant hum of aircraft engines outside. Maria could feel her pulse quickening as the general's intense gaze seemed to bore right through her. She had no idea what had captured his attention, but something had definitely stopped him cold in the middle of his inspection. General Morrison's eyes were fixed on Maria's wrist, specifically on the small metal that caught the morning light streaming through the hangar windows. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife, Maria instinctively pulled her sleeve down, trying to cover the metal, but it was too late. The general had seen it clearly. "Excuse me," General Morrison said, his voice softer than Maria had expected. "May I ask you something?" Maria's throat felt dry. She had never spoken directly to anyone above the rank of sergeant in her 3 years at the base. "Yes, sir," she managed to whisper. "That medal on your wrist," the general continued, taking a step closer. "Where did you get it?" Maria's hand instinctively moved to cover the medal completely. Her mind raced with confusion and fear. Why was the general interested in her old, worthless piece of jewelry? It belonged to my father, sir." The other officers exchanged glances, clearly puzzled by their commanding officer's sudden interest in a maintenance worker's accessory. Colonel Peters, the general's aide, cleared his throat quietly, trying to remind the general about their scheduled inspection timeline. General Morrison ignored the subtle prompt. His eyes never left Maria's face. "What was your father's name?" "Captain Eduardo Santos, sir," Maria replied, her voice barely audible. She hadn't spoken her father's name and rank aloud in years. It always brought back painful memories she preferred to keep buried. The general's expression changed dramatically. His formal military bearing softened, and something that looked almost like recognition flickered across his face. "Captain Eduardo Santos," he repeated slowly, as if testing how the name sounded. "Tell me, what unit did he serve with?" Maria felt her legs becoming weak. Why was this happening? Why was the general asking about her father? "The 18th Fighter Squadron, sir. He was killed in action in Afghanistan in 2003. A heavy silence fell over the group. The other officers looked uncomfortable, unsure of how to respond to this unexpected turn in what should have been a routine inspection. General Morrison stood perfectly still for what felt like an eternity, his eyes never leaving Maria's face. "You look just like him," the general said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "You have his eyes." Maria felt the world spinning around her. How could this general possibly know what her father looked like? She had been only 19 when her father died, and she had very few memories of his military service. Her mother had rarely talked about his time in the Air Force, preferring to focus on moving forward rather than dwelling on the past. "Sir, I don't understand," Maria said, her voice trembling slightly. General Morrison glanced around at his staff, then back at Maria. "Is there somewhere private we could talk? Just for a few minutes?" Colonel Peters stepped forward. "General, we have the briefing with the Pentagon at 0900 hours. Reschedule it," General Morrison said firmly. "This is more important." Maria felt panic rising in her chest. Was she in trouble? Had she done something wrong? "Sir, if I violated any regulations, I'm sorry. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to wear personal items while working." "You haven't done anything wrong," the general assured her quickly. Quite the opposite, actually. He looked around the hangar, then gestured toward a small office area in the corner. "Could we step over there for a moment?" Maria nodded nervously and followed the general toward the office, her mind racing with possibilities. Behind them, the inspection team waited uncertainly, clearly confused about what was happening but unwilling to question their commanding officer's judgment. As they walked, Maria noticed that General Morrison's pace was slower than before, almost careful, as if he was trying to process something significant. She could see the wheels turning in his mind, and it made her even more nervous about what he might want to discuss. The small office was typically military: functional furniture, motivational posters, and a single window that looked out over the flight line. General Morrison gestured for Maria to sit in the chair across from the desk while he remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back. "Maria," he said gently, "I need to ask you some questions about your father. I know this might be difficult, but it's very important." Maria nodded, though she wasn't sure she was ready for whatever was coming next. The medal on her wrist suddenly felt heavier than it had in years, as if it carried secrets she had never known existed. She had always assumed it was just a simple military commendation, something routine that every soldier received. Now she was beginning to wonder if there was much more to the story than her mother had ever told her. "I'll try to answer whatever you need to know, sir," she said quietly. General Morrison sat down across from Maria, his demeanor completely different from the authoritative commander who had been conducting the inspection just minutes earlier. He looked almost vulnerable, as if he was about to share something deeply personal. "Maria, I served with your father in Afghanistan," he began, his voice careful and measured. I was a lieutenant colonel then, and Eduardo was one of the finest pilots I ever had the privilege to command. Maria's heart began pounding. In all her years of wondering about her father's service, she had never imagined she would meet someone who actually knew him. Her mother had always been vague about the details, saying only that he died serving his country and that she should be proud of him. "He saved my life," General Morrison continued, his eyes distant as if he was reliving a memory, "along with the lives of 12 other men. That medal you're wearing isn't just any commendation, Maria. It's the Silver Star." Maria looked down at the worn piece of metal on her wrist, seeing it with completely new eyes. "The Silver Star?" she whispered. "The third highest military decoration for valor in combat," the general explained. "Your father received it posthumously for extraordinary gallantry in action. But Maria, there's something else you need to know, something that was classified until recently." Maria felt her hands trembling. The simple medal she had worn as a memory of her father was actually one of the highest honors the military could bestow. But what else could there be? What had been classified? General Morrison leaned forward, his expression serious but kind. "The mission that took your father's life wasn't just any mission. Our forward operating base was under heavy attack, and we had wounded soldiers trapped in a building that was about to be overrun by enemy forces. The evacuation helicopters couldn't land because of intense ground fire." Maria listened intently, hanging on every word. This was more information about her father's final day than she had ever received. "Eduardo volunteered to fly a solo mission in an F-16 to provide close air support," the general continued. "It was incredibly dangerous. He had to fly low and fast in a narrow valley surrounded by mountains, with enemy forces shooting at him from multiple positions. But he did it anyway." "What happened?" Maria asked, though she dreaded hearing the answer. "He completed the mission perfectly. His precision strikes eliminated the enemy positions and allowed our helicopters to evacuate all 13 wounded soldiers safely. But on his final pass, his aircraft was hit by enemy fire. He managed to guide his plane away from our base and the nearby village before—" The general's voice trailed off. Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Before he crashed. Yes. But because of his actions, 13 families got their sons and husbands back home, including me. I was one of those wounded soldiers trapped in that building." The office fell silent except for the distant sounds of aircraft operations outside. Maria tried to process everything she had just learned. Her father wasn't just a pilot who died in service. He was a hero who sacrificed himself to save others. And the man sitting across from her was alive because of her father's courage. "Why wasn't I told any of this?" Maria asked, wiping tears from her cheeks. General Morrison sighed deeply. "The details of the mission were classified for national security reasons. Your mother was told that your father died heroically in the line of duty, and that he was awarded the Silver Star. But the specific circumstances couldn't be shared at the time. The classification was only lifted 6 months ago." "My mother never told me about the Silver Star," Maria said, confused. "She may not have understood its significance," the general replied gently. "Military families often receive medals and commendations without fully understanding what they represent. She probably thought it was just another military award." Maria looked down at the medal again, now seeing it as so much more than a simple keepsake. It represented her father's ultimate sacrifice and the lives he saved in his final moments. "Maria, I have to ask you something," General Morrison said, his tone becoming more formal. "What are you doing working as a cleaner? With your father's service record and your obvious intelligence, you could be doing so much more." Maria felt embarrassed. "I never finished college, sir. After my father died, my mother struggled financially and I had to work to help support us. I've been trying to save money for my daughter's education, but it's been difficult." General Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "Your daughter wants to go to college?" "She wants to study aerospace engineering," Maria said with obvious pride. "She's brilliant, but I don't know how I'll afford the tuition." The general was quiet for a long moment, clearly thinking about something. Outside, Maria could hear the sounds of the inspection team waiting patiently for their commander to return. She wondered what they must be thinking about this unexpected delay. "Maria," General Morrison said finally, "I think it's time someone properly honored your father's sacrifice. And I think it's time his family received the recognition and support they deserve." Over the following days, Maria's life began to change in ways she never could have imagined. General Morrison had made several phone calls immediately after their conversation, and within 48 hours, Maria received a call from the base personnel office asking her to come in for a meeting. When she arrived at the administration building, she was greeted by Captain Jennifer Walsh, a kind woman who explained that Maria was eligible for several military family benefits she had never known existed. Because her father had died in the line of duty and received the Silver Star, both Maria and her daughter qualified for educational assistance programs that could cover most of Sophia's college expenses. "Why wasn't I told about this before?" Maria asked, feeling a mixture of relief and frustration. Captain Walsh explained that the programs existed, but families often weren't properly informed about them, especially when the service member died many years ago. "The system isn't perfect," she admitted, "but General Morrison has personally ensured that your case receives immediate attention." Maria left the meeting with a folder full of paperwork and a head full of hope. For the first time in years, Sophia's dream of becoming an aerospace engineer seemed actually achievable. But the changes in Maria's life were just beginning. 2 days later, Maria was cleaning in Hangar 3 when Sergeant Davis approached her with unusual news. "Santos, you need to report to General Morrison's office at 1400 hours. Maria's heart skipped a beat. She had assumed their conversation was finished. What could the general possibly want now? When she arrived at the general's office, she was surprised to find several other people there. General Morrison introduced her to Dr. Patricia Williams, the base education coordinator, and Master Sergeant Robert Chen, who ran the base's civilian employee development program. "Maria," General Morrison began, "we've been discussing your situation and we have a proposition for you." Dr. Williams leaned forward with a warm smile. "Maria, how would you feel about finishing your college degree?" Maria was stunned. I never thought that would be possible, ma'am. I can't afford to stop working and I don't have time for classes." "That's where we come in," Master Sergeant Chen explained. "The Air Force has partnerships with several universities that offer flexible degree programs for military families and civilian employees. You could complete your bachelor's degree through online classes and weekend sessions, and we could arrange your work schedule to accommodate your studies." "But I still couldn't afford the tuition," Maria protested. General Morrison smiled. "Actually, you can. Between the military family education benefits you're now eligible for and the base's civilian employee scholarship program, your tuition would be completely covered." Maria felt dizzy. This couldn't be real. Just a week ago, she was worried about making rent and saving money for Sophia's education. Now these people were telling her she could go back to school herself. "There's more," Dr. Williams added. "Once you complete your degree, there would be opportunities for advancement here on the base. Administrative positions, program coordinator roles, maybe even working with the aerospace engineering teams that your daughter is interested in." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you doing all this for me?" General Morrison's expression became serious. "Because your father gave his life to save mine and the lives of 12 other men. Because you've been working hard and raising your daughter with dignity and determination, and because it's simply the right thing to do." Over the next few weeks, Maria began taking placement tests and meeting with academic advisors. She discovered she had enough life experience and work credits to enter as a junior, meaning she could complete her degree in just 2 years. The base arranged for her to work part-time hours with full-time pay while she attended classes. Sophia was ecstatic when Maria told her the news. "Mom, you're going to college too?" "This is incredible." But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when Maria received a phone call from her mother, who lived in New Mexico. "Maria, mija, I got a call from the Air Force," her mother said, her voice emotional. "They want to give your father a proper military funeral ceremony. They said they want to honor his sacrifice publicly." Maria learned that General Morrison had arranged for a memorial service to be held at Arlington National Cemetery. Captain Eduardo Santos would finally receive the recognition he deserved, and Maria would have a chance to properly say goodbye to the father she had barely known. "But Mama," Maria said, "why didn't you ever tell me about the Silver Star? Why didn't you tell me how he really died?" Her mother was quiet for a long moment. "Mija, when your father died, I was so angry. Angry at the military, angry at the war, angry at God. They gave me that medal, but all I could see was that it couldn't bring him back. I put it away and tried to forget. I thought it would be easier for you if you didn't know the details. I understand, Mama, but I need to know about him now. I need Sophia to know about her grandfather. Yes, mija, it's time. As Maria hung up the phone, she looked at the silver star on her wrist with new appreciation. It wasn't just a medal. It was a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and love. Her father had died saving others, and now those same qualities were helping her build a better future for herself and her daughter. She realized that her father's legacy wasn't just about his final heroic act. It was about the values he had lived by: courage, determination, and putting others before yourself. These were the same values Maria had been living by for years without even realizing it, working multiple jobs and sacrificing her own dreams to give Sophia a better life. Now, finally, she was learning that sometimes sacrifice leads to unexpected opportunities, and sometimes heroes' families get a second chance at their own dreams. The memorial service at Arlington National Cemetery took place on a crisp October morning. Maria stood between her mother and Sophia, watching as an honor guard performed the traditional military ceremony for her father. General Morrison was there, along with several other officers who had served with Captain Eduardo Santos in Afghanistan. As the folded American flag was presented to Maria's mother, General Morrison stepped forward to address the small gathering of family and military personnel. Captain Eduardo Santos made the ultimate sacrifice to save the lives of his fellow service members, the general said, his voice carrying across the quiet cemetery. His courage and selflessness embodied the highest ideals of military service. Today we not only honor his memory, but we also recognize the family he left behind, a family that has continued to demonstrate the same strength and determination that defined their father and husband. After the ceremony, several of the men who had been saved by Maria's father approached her to share their memories. Each had a story about Eduardo's humor, his skill as a pilot, and his dedication to his mission and his fellow soldiers. "Your father talked about you and your mother constantly," said Colonel James Murphy, who had been a young lieutenant during the Afghanistan deployment. "He carried pictures of you in his flight suit and would show them to anyone who would look. He was so proud of his little girl and so excited about the future he was building for his family." Maria felt a deep sense of connection to her father that she had never experienced before. For the first time, he felt real to her. Not just a faded photograph on her mother's dresser, but a living, breathing person who had loved her deeply. The months that followed were a whirlwind of positive changes. Maria threw herself into her college coursework with the same determination she had always brought to her work. Her professors were impressed by her maturity and life experience, and she found herself excelling in subjects she had once thought were beyond her reach. Sophia, meanwhile, was thriving in her senior year. With the financial pressure of college tuition removed, she was able to focus entirely on her studies and her applications to aerospace engineering programs. She had her sights set on the Air Force Academy. Inspired by her grandfather, a story in her mother's transformation, General Morrison became an unexpected mentor to both Maria and Sophia. He would occasionally check in on their progress and offer guidance when they faced challenges. When Sophia was struggling with her academy application essay, he spent an afternoon helping her craft a compelling narrative about her family's military legacy and her own dreams of serving her country. "Your grandfather would be incredibly proud of both of you," he told them during one of their meetings. "He always said his greatest mission was taking care of his family. In a way, he's still accomplishing that mission through the two of you." Maria's work life had also transformed dramatically. Her new position as an administrative coordinator in the base's logistics department was challenging and rewarding in ways her cleaning job had never been. She was using her mind instead of just her hands, solving problems and contributing to important military operations. Her supervisor, Major Thompson, quickly recognized Maria's potential and began giving her increasingly complex assignments. "You have a natural talent for logistics and organization," he told her during her 6-month review. "Have you ever considered pursuing a master's degree in business administration or public administration?" The suggestion planted a seed in Maria's mind. A year ago, she couldn't have imagined finishing her bachelor's degree. Now she was contemplating graduate school. The transformation seemed almost magical, but she knew it was really the result of hard work, determination, and the opportunities that had opened up because of her father's sacrifice. One evening, as Maria was studying for her final exams, Sophia approached her with exciting news. "Mom, I got accepted to the Air Force Academy." Sophia announced, waving the acceptance letter in the air. Maria jumped up from her desk and hugged her daughter tightly. Sophia, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. There's more, Sophia said, grinning. General Morrison wrote one of my recommendation letters, and he mentioned that they have a special program for children of Silver Star recipients. I'll be able to study aerospace engineering with a focus on military applications, and after graduation I'll be commissioned as an officer. As Maria held her daughter, she thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. It had started with a simple act of cleaning a hangar, but it had led to discoveries about her father's heroism, opportunities for education and advancement, and a completely transformed future for her family. That night, Maria called her mother to share Sophia's news. Mia, your father would be so happy, her mother said, crying tears of joy. His granddaughter is going to be an Air Force officer, and his daughter is going to have a college degree. This is everything he dreamed of for his family. Mama, I want to ask you something, Maria said. I've been thinking about changing my name back to Santos. I want Sophia and me to carry Papa's name with pride. Oh, Mika, yes. He would love that so much. As Maria hung up the phone, she looked at the silver star on her wrist and smiled. Her father's sacrifice had saved 13 lives on that day in Afghanistan, but its impact was still rippling through time, creating opportunities and opening doors for his family 20 years later. Tomorrow, she would continue her studies, work toward her degree, and build the future her father had dreamed of for her. And in a few months, Sophia would begin her journey to becoming the aerospace engineer she had always wanted to be, following in her grandfather's footsteps of service to her country. 2 years later, Maria Santos walked across the stage at the base auditorium to receive her Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration. The ceremony was small but meaningful, attended by her mother, Sophia, General Morrison, and several colleagues from the base who had become close friends during her academic journey. As she accepted her diploma, Maria looked out into the audience and saw faces filled with pride and support. General Morrison gave her a thumbs up, while Sophia recorded everything on her phone, beaming with excitement. Her mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what her daughter had accomplished. After the ceremony, there was a small reception in the base community center. Maria found herself surrounded by well-wishers and colleagues who wanted to congratulate her on her achievement. So what's next? Asked Dr. Williams, the education coordinator who had helped make Maria's college journey possible. Actually, I have some news, Maria replied with a smile. I've been accepted into the master's program in public administration at the state university, and Major Thompson has offered me a promotion to Deputy Director of Logistics Operations. The promotion was significant. Maria would be overseeing supply chain operations for the entire base, managing a team of 12 people, and coordinating with military installations across the country. It was a far cry from pushing a mop bucket through empty hangars. But perhaps the most meaningful moment of the evening came when General Morrison pulled Maria aside for a private conversation. Maria, I have something to tell you, he said, his expression serious but warm. Next month, I'm being promoted to 2-star general and transferred to the Pentagon. But before I leave, I wanted you to know that meeting you and your family has been one of the highlights of my military career. Maria felt a pang of sadness. General Morrison had become like a father figure to her and Sophia over the past 2 years. We're going to miss you terribly, sir. The feeling is mutual. But I want you to know that your father's legacy will continue to make a difference. I'm working on establishing a scholarship fund in Captain Eduardo Santos's name. It will provide educational opportunities for children of fallen service members, just like what happened for you and Sophia. Maria was speechless. Her father's name would live on in a way that would help other families facing the same challenges she had faced. There's something else, the general continued. I want you to consider applying for officer candidate school. Maria's eyes widened. Sir, I'm 44 years old. Isn't it too late for something like that? Age is just a number, Maria. You have leadership skills, education, and experience that the Air Force needs. You understand logistics, you relate well to people, and you have the kind of integrity and determination that makes great officers. Your father was an officer, and I think you have the same qualities he did. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Maria had never imagined herself as a military officer, but as she thought about it, she realized it might be the perfect way to honor her father's memory while continuing to build her own career. Meanwhile, Sophia was thriving at the Air Force Academy. Her grades were excellent, and she had been selected for a summer internship with a team designing next-generation fighter aircraft. During her phone calls home, she would excitedly tell Maria about her classes in aerodynamics, propulsion systems, and military strategy. "Mom, you should see the aircraft we're working on," Sophia said during one of their weekly conversations. "It's incredible technology, and the best part is that I'm actually contributing to the design process. My professors say I have a natural instinct for aerospace engineering." "Your grandfather would be so proud," Maria replied. "You're living his dream in ways he never could have imagined." "Speaking of Grandpa," Sophia said, "I've been thinking about something. For my senior project, I want to design a memorial for fallen pilots, something that incorporates engineering principles with artistic design. Would you help me research Grandpa's story and the stories of other pilots like him?" Maria felt her heart swell with pride. Sophia wasn't just succeeding academically, she was finding ways to honor her family's military legacy while pursuing her own passions. As the conversation ended, Maria reflected on how dramatically her life had changed since that morning in the hangar, when General Morrison first noticed the silver star on her wrist. She had gone from being invisible to being recognized, from struggling financially to having opportunities she never dreamed possible, from wondering about her father's service to being proud of his heroic legacy. But the transformation wasn't just about external circumstances. Maria had also discovered strength and capabilities within herself that she never knew existed. She had learned that she was intelligent, capable, and worthy of respect and opportunity. She had proven to herself that it was never too late to pursue dreams, and that hard work and determination could overcome almost any obstacle. That evening, as Maria worked on her application for officer candidate school, she touched the silver star on her wrist and smiled. The worn metal had become her talisman, a reminder of where she came from and inspiration for where she was going. Her father had saved 13 lives on that day in Afghanistan, but his sacrifice was still saving lives, including her own and Sophia's. Captain Eduardo Santos had given his family the most precious gift imaginable, the opportunity to discover their own courage and to build lives worthy of his sacrifice. 5 years after that fateful morning in the hangar, Lieutenant Maria Santos stood in the same hangar where her life had been transformed. But now she wore the uniform of an Air Force officer. She had successfully completed officer candidate school and was now serving as the Deputy Base Operations Officer, overseeing logistics and support operations for the entire installation. The hangar had been renamed the Captain Eduardo Santos Memorial Hangar in honor of her father's sacrifice. A bronze plaque near the entrance told the story of his heroic final mission and listed the names of the 13 men whose lives he had saved. General Morrison, now a 2-star general at the Pentagon, had personally overseen the dedication ceremony the previous year. Today was special for another reason. Sophia was graduating from the Air Force Academy and would be commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Air Force. She had finished in the top 5% of her class and had been selected for pilot training, the same career path her grandfather had followed 22 years earlier. As Maria walked through the hangar, inspecting the preparations for a change of command ceremony scheduled for that afternoon, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her family to this moment. The woman who had once cleaned these floors was now responsible for managing operations that kept the base running smoothly. Her assistant, Staff Sergeant Williams, approached with the daily briefing folder. "Ma'am, everything is ready for this afternoon's ceremony. Colonel Harrison asked me to remind you that the new wing commander specifically requested to meet with you after the ceremony." Maria nodded. The new wing commander was reportedly very interested in innovative logistics strategies, and Maria had developed several programs that had significantly improved efficiency and reduced costs for the base. Her work had been recognized throughout the Air Force, and she had been invited to present her ideas at conferences and training seminars. As she reviewed the ceremony preparations, Maria noticed a young airman struggling to move some equipment. She walked over to help, and as they worked together, the airman looked surprised that an officer would assist with manual labor. "Ma'am, you don't need to help with this. I can handle it," he said. Maria smiled. "Airman, I've moved plenty of equipment in my time. There's no job on this base that's beneath any of us." The young airman's eyes widened as he noticed the nameplate on Maria's uniform. "Santos, Ma'am, are you related to the Captain Santos this hangar is named after? He was my father, Maria replied with pride. Wow, ma'am. I've read about his mission. He was a real hero. Yes, he was. But you know what I've learned? Heroism isn't just about one dramatic moment. It's about showing up every day, doing your job with integrity, and taking care of the people around you. That afternoon, Sophia arrived for the ceremony wearing her crisp new lieutenant's uniform. Mother and daughter stood together, both in Air Force blue, representing 2 generations of service inspired by Captain Eduardo Santos's legacy. I still can't believe this is real, Sophia whispered to her mother as they watched the ceremony preparations. Your grandfather would be so proud, Maria replied. You're going to be an incredible pilot. Actually, Mom, I have something to tell you. I've been selected for a special program. I'm going to be flying F-16s, the same aircraft Grandpa flew. Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes. The circle was complete. Sophia would be flying the same type of aircraft her grandfather had used to save 13 lives in Afghanistan. After the ceremony, Maria was approached by the new wing commander, Colonel Patricia Chen. Lieutenant Santos, I've been reading about your logistics innovations. I understand you've reduced supply costs by 30% while improving delivery times? Yes, ma'am. We implemented a predictive analytics system that anticipates supply needs and optimizes delivery schedules. Impressive. I also understand you're working on your master's degree? I just completed my master's in public administration, ma'am. I'm considering pursuing a doctorate in organizational management, Colonel Chen smiled. I think we need to talk about your future career path. The Air Force needs innovative leaders like you in senior positions. As the day wound down, Maria found herself alone in the hangar where everything had started. She walked to the memorial plaque and read her father's name, thinking about the chain of events that had led from his sacrifice to this moment. Her phone buzzed with a text message from General Morrison. Saw the news about Sophia's pilot selection. Eduardo would be bursting with pride. You've both honored his memory in the most beautiful way possible. Maria smiled and touched the silver star that still hung from her wrist, now worn proudly outside her uniform as a symbol of her family's legacy of service. The medal had opened a door that day in the hangar, but everything that followed had been earned through hard work, determination, and the courage to pursue dreams she had once thought impossible. As she prepared to leave the hangar, Maria noticed a young maintenance worker mopping the floors, working quietly and efficiently, just as she had done years before. She walked over to introduce herself. Good evening. I'm Lieutenant Santos. I don't think we've met. The young woman looked up, surprised to be addressed by an officer. I'm Airman Rodriguez, ma'am. I've heard about you. Everyone says you used to work maintenance before you became an officer. That's right. And I want you to know that the work you're doing is important and valued. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, and thank you, ma'am. That means a lot. As Maria walked out of the hangar, she realized that her story had come full circle. But it was far from over. Sophia was beginning her own journey as a pilot, carrying forward their family's tradition of military service. And somewhere out there, other young people were working hard, pursuing their dreams, and waiting for their own moment of recognition and opportunity. The silver star on Maria's wrist caught the last rays of sunlight as she headed home. It was no longer just a reminder of her father's sacrifice. It had become a symbol of the ongoing legacy of courage, determination, and service that would continue through her daughter and the countless lives they would all touch in the years to come. Captain Eduardo Santos had saved 13 lives on one day in Afghanistan, but his legacy of heroism was still saving lives and changing futures, one person at a time in ways he never could have imagined.